Jambo, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Safari Mack Returns to Africa. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you making connections to the wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're still hanging out here in the woodlands, feeding with the giraffe, or known by their Latin name of Giraffe camelepardus, or even by their Swahili name of Twiga. Well, I can tell you right now, while so far we're still going through a bit of a drought, and even with the migration going on for the wildebeests and zebras and gazelles, you know, the Maasai giraffes here in the Serengeti, they're not doing too bad. That's because, just as a fun little early fact, Maasai giraffes don't need to migrate as they are able to feed on 100 different species of woodland foliage, which can serve as a great food supply that is resistant to the extremities of the drought. But enough of that right now. We got to get back to the herd, or the tower, and we've got to continue on. But before we begin, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Check out my Facebook page for content on conservation. And if you have a question about animals, or if there's an animal that you want me to do in the future, you just have to send me an email, which you'll always find the link to, either on my YouTube page, as well as as down in the description below. But if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started with the wild things. Now, obviously, since these animals are much bigger than us, it's no surprise that the giraffe's heart is 44 times bigger than that of humans. In fact, the giraffe's heart alone weighs 25 pounds, almost the same weight as their skull. But now, why? Of course, you're wondering, why do they need that big heart? They have to be able to pump all that blood up that long neck, up to their head somehow. Otherwise, they run the risk of fainting and being vulnerable to predators. In fact, biologists have actually recorded males during necking competitions or fights for females, or for food, or for territory, or since they're not really territorial animals, just to keep an area in check. Older experienced males have been seen actually trying to hit their opponents under their neck, which can block blood flow for a brief second, but cause the giraffes to faint and become vulnerable to predators, such as the lions, hyenas, leopards, whatever is around. They need to watch out. But now let's talk again about their tongue. Now, you may have already heard me say this last week with part 1. That giraffe tongue is 18 inches alone from the tip to the root and is prehensile, similar to that. Think of it like an extra hand, which they can use to navigate through those sharp thorns on the acacia tree that can make you bleed if you prick your finger on one, and be able to pull off those delicious greens and begin to feed. But the reason why it's this color is because since they expose their tongue out to the sun all day in their search for food, they don't get sunburned because of this. Now, in terms of how they run, it's fairly interesting. Unlike most other animals on the planet, they don't propel themselves forward with their back legs. They have to rely on their front legs instead to begin running, especially when they're running up to speeds of 37 miles an hour. As you can see, this group of giraffes are doing here in Tanzania. As you can see, they start with their front, and as they move, their back legs kind of reach up to catch them and keep them balanced. So in a way, it's kind of it's an interesting way of how they run. It kind of makes you think that they've got really huge pecs. At least that's what I like to think of it. Another interesting thing about giraffes is that on their skin, they have a kind of odor. They each have an odor that can help repel pests and other forms of parasites, such as fleas or ticks. But of course, that's not going to stop all of them. And that's when they rely on the oxbird to help clean them, keep their fur clean, and the birds get a free ride and protection from the giraffe. Finally, we've often thought of giraffes as these giant, silent animals. But it's now believed that some scientists actually believe that, similar to elephants and other large animals, giraffes can communicate through a very low frequency sound that most humans can't hear. Sadly, Despite their elegance, grace, and beauty and their popularity across the world, giraffes are facing problems, as all animals are. Sadly, a few giraffe species are critically endangered from human development of land, so through habitat loss, their human population growth. As you can see, it's not really an easy it's not something that we can take lightly. As for these unfortunately, these two were electrocuted by telephone wires. And it gets even worse. Giraffes have also been victims to poaching. They are often killed to have their meat sold on the black market, as well as their skins to be sold, and even their certain parts of their bodies, like the tail or ears or anything else, they can be sold to people that believe in superstition and magic to ward off like evil spirits. So sadly, this really is a bit of a major problem. This is actually what's been called a silent extinction, meaning that there are actually said to be a lot more other animals than there are of giraffes. And it's not easy to help protect these animals from extinction. Of course, I said it's not easy, but it's still possible to do something. And that's just what we are doing. Although, I will admit, giraffe conservation is a major challenge. Remember how I said how big their heart was to pump all that blood up their long neck up to their head? We all probably know how giraffes sleep only 5 minutes a day, or at least 1 hour a day through 5-minute intervals. Can you imagine how highly stressed these animals must be? That can make it even more difficult when these rangers here are trying to relocate this giraffe to an area where they can be safe, maybe the Serengeti or other regions such as special preserves to keep these animals from poaching, or to reduce competition, or to help diversify the gene pool of certain areas, as their habitats are known to suffer from habitat segregation or isolation. So, as a result, catching these animals is more challenging and easier said than done. The people have to work quickly to get the animal. If even using sedation is dangerous, as too much or too long, and you can say goodbye to that giraffe. They will die. But through hard work, dedication, and in a way, a lot of practice and luck, these animals are making a comeback. And some giraffes subspecies are actually even being reintroduced to some spots where they have sadly become extinct in some spots. But there's more that needs to be done. It's not just the international people that are working to help them. Local communities are working hard too to help these animals survive and not go extinct. Because I don't know about you, but I really would not want to live in a world without giraffes. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I have for this episode, so thank you for joining me, and be sure to join me next weekend at night as we go on a night search for the nocturnal aardvark. But until next week, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you all out there.